Well, it looks like a Model 94. The real question becomes is, do we expend the effort to fix this? And I've heard a lot of complaints on the internet about my thing about boiling in water is no good. Okay, that's fine, but here's what we're going to talk about. Deep shankers. Deep shankers everywhere. This thing has been organically rusted out in a barn. So we go the rest of the way down. Okay, and you see this thing, the wood is in magnificent shape. We'll be able to save the wood. The receiver is almost purple. Well, that's patina. Okay, well you know where I stand on patina, right? The rest of the gun looks okay. But the question you have is, should I even do this or shouldn't I even do this? Well, this gun was made in 1942, so it doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles on it. It's got a clean bore, and we'll try to get some photographing a bore is difficult because there's just so much focus surface. I don't know. But it's got a clean enough bore to be worth it. But some of the questions you got to ask yourself is this gun historically significant? Did it belong to Lawrence of Arabia? We're pretty sure it didn't. I think he was dead by the time World War II fired up. We're going to do this gun. We're going to do a full, as we did in Conservation 101, but I'm going to bring out a few things that I haven't talked about before about what not to do and what to do. If we go after this heavy-duty shanker right here, there's going to be a big white spot on this gun, and that's what the collectors just absolutely cannot tolerate. And I don't blame them, all right? What they're trying to keep you from doing is wire wheeling this thing to within an inch of death. What I want to show you guys is we're going to do a boil out, bang on this thing with a polished hammer, and it'll turn red. And then we're also going to do the cartridge case. This has been recommended as a way to remove rust, and it works. It's labor intensive, but we'll look at what that does. And we'll look at how big of pits it leaves. And then I'm trying to find a piece of steel that's rusted like this in the shop because I want to show you what happens if you buff this, which you cannot do. And if you buff it and why it looks like absolute warmed over death if you buff something. Anyway, Model 94, built in 1942. And this, boys and girls, is going to be what we're going to go after this week. Strap in, because this is going to be a pretty long ride. We do a lot of work in this shop, and I'm going to tell you what, the floors, look at that. Look at all that crap, all right? The time to clean your shop is before you start taking an 80-year-old 94 apart on the top. You don't need to see this, but I'm just telling you, sweep down before you go, because if you drop a part, let's drop a part in that. Well, that's too big of a part. You kind of get what I mean, though. Hang on a minute. Let's get a gun screw, shall we? Here we go. Tub. Gun screws, right? You drop a screw that's about this big on this deck, and it's going to disappear. Because if you roll this up in like this, okay, where'd that screw go? And that screw's gone, and you can't do that. You don't have time to fight with that. You don't have time to take a magnet through it. I've actually swept up wood chips before and burned the pile to find a spring, which I then had to retemper, blah, blah, blah. Clean up before you start up. Recently, a gentleman by the name of Wayne Western from out west, I'm assuming this man's a large competitor, SAS shooter, he's fairly well known in his community, sent me something for working on Winchesters. And I want to show you what he sent me. All right. This is a set of Winchester pin reamers for reaming, taper reaming all of the holes. And I'm going to tell you what, this little collection of stuff is solid gold. Anyway, I just wanted to thank him for sending that to us. We're going to look at what it's going to take to sharpen these, and I don't know if they're going to be actually sharpenable. Hang on a minute here. Oops. Let me get all these in the right holes. There we go. We're going to look at that, and the other thing we're going to do, if we get into an acroglass type deal, okay, this lid broke up the long grain, broke there, broke here, was glued together, the end grain top popped. Okay, so I'm going to make this comparison. That needs to be glued together and its structural integrity is barely there, as opposed to, like, let's say an 854 end. And what's the difference between that and that? And not much. And this 854 end is about where you're going to be able to go. You're not going to be able to fix much more than this. So we'll do that repair, we'll do this repair, and probably make its own little episode out of it. Anyway, Mr. Western, I really appreciate your consideration, and I will do with your reamers what you asked me to do. And on that note, all right, so I got this thing torn down. Tearing down a 94 is pretty straightforward, and if you're going to do what we're going to do, you know how to do it. But, I mean, when we put it back together again, we'll examine each piece, and I'll show you what we got. Oh, my God, he threw it all over the bench. You're right, because I'm about to boil it and do a whole bunch of stuff to it. So, butt plate. If you're looking at this butt plate here, you can see, here, let me get us a little bit of cross-light there. You can see a lot of rust there, a lot of rust on the bottom, right? Magazine tube. And this is the shanker we were talking about. Push in on that, will you? Can you do that right where my thumb is? Here we go. Well, let's let it focus. Got it. See that big old shanker right there? That has three, look at that. When we roll it crosswise, that thing actually has depth. And that's the one we're going to concentrate on. That one, and these three on different techniques for taking this off. All right. The barrel isn't as bad as the magazine tube, but it's still heavily rusted up at the front. Now, we're going to attempt to show this, and I'm going to try something. Don't move. I'm going to try something here. So the inside of the barrel, we're pulling the focus in and out, but this is why we do the gun. The bore is cherry. It's in the caliber you can get, and the bore is cherry, and we can fix or not terribly hose the rest of the way up, the rest of the gun. Remember, you buy the bore. That's the decision-making point. If the bore is good, the rest of it can look like a canoe paddle because the gun's interesting because it can actually be shot. Now, final thing. This is an old Whitneyville Kennedy barrel, and we're going to try that force focus thing again. And you can see why. I'm going to put my finger back here. Yeah, there's no inside of this thing. It's a piece of black iron water pipe. It's dark. We're done. But why do we have this out? This has representative rust on it. It has some pitting on it. This is the barrel that we are going to buff. We're going to buff this thing down till it's shiny. And I got a point I want to prove about why you do not buff a previously done gun, and I don't care. Once the gun has been allowed to rust and pit, you're done. And the decision was made by somebody other than you. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go back and hang all this in Thor, the long pieces. We're going to hang them all in Thor. Short pieces we'll do in a pot. So by boiling, we're going to convert the red ferric oxide into a black, right in there. That's what the gun looked like when it was new. Look at how beautiful that is. Into a black ferroferric oxide, and that's what boiling in the water does. If you wanted to remove the bluing, you can remove the bluing with a wire wheel. You can mechanically grind it off, or you can take bluing off with chemicals. So I'll also do that on this barrel, is we will wire wheel off all of this rust down into the pits, and I'm going to show you what that looks like, because that removes all of the polish. If you turn all the rust black first, it's really easy to chemically remove rust. It really is. You can do it with some Coca-Cola and a couple of seconds of vigorous rubbing. All right, I'm going to go put all this in a pot, and then we're going to come back and talk about the wood. And I'm going to give you a quick upfront about why we got to talk about the wood. Oh my, can you see the, yeah, there's mold all over the inside of that. So we'll be back. Some of you know about Thor. Thor is a device that you don't need. There's about 50 gallons of water in this thing, and I got about 12 kW worth of heaters in it. And if you come from 120 volts to 240 volts, we're going to watch this thing really start rolling here in a minute. You don't need this piece of equipment if you're only doing one gun every 6 months. We mentioned in Conservation 101 about the fact that a piece of gutter will work just fine. A gutter, two ends, use it once and throw all $3.47 worth of it in the garbage when you don't need it. This thing is boiling so hard it's actually bouncing the table up and down. But because I'm dripping water in, because I want my overflow to take any oil off of this thing we got and run it into the pan, you're in a thermodynamic balance here where you're putting heat in and then you're dumping it down the overflow pipe. So it's a tiptoeing act. And that's about as much water as you want to run out of it, or just a little bit less. No, it's not real fancy, but buddy, it works for me. All right, so we're almost up to a rolling boil. When this thing really gets going, it'll blow water out the top of it. I just wanted to show you that. Okay, so now, that goes in there like that. This comes on top in order to reduce evaporative heat loss. All that steam you see is heat that we had to put in the bottom of this thing. Whether you're burning propane, crunching amps, you know, you're sucking electricity to do this, or you've actually got a fire built underneath the bottom of it, one or the other, you still got to feed this system. It's not inexpensive, but man, if you're doing 5, 6, 7 guns a week like I am, you're gonna need one eventually. But dude, until you do more than like 5 or 6 guns in a year, don't even worry about it. It's money you didn't need to spend. Spend it on better screwdrivers and polished hammers. Anyway, we're gonna go back and work on the wood here. So, here we are. We have all this mold and mildew, and this is gonna seem a little jank, but I'm gonna do it anyway. You get something with ammonium chloride in it that doesn't have a hole in the bottle, but this one has a hole in the bottle, and you just soak this thing down with ammonium chloride, and I can't even figure out how to set it down, but it's what we had back in the head. And you scrub it in and you let it sit there and soak for a little while, and this will kill everything. This kills all that mold, mildew. Believe it or not, gasolines and kerosenes don't appear to kill mold very well. I found this out from Bob Veazey. I'm going to reach in front. Yeah. But he's pretty much the guru. So we did that side. Now we're going to do this because we're in here anyway. I'm going to go ahead and scrub this down, scrub down the head. Okay, we're good here. There was nothing in the butt. We've got some in the forend. Hang on, I'm off camera because I got to get this leak while I still got some of this left. Here we go. You don't have to use that brand of cleaner. It's just what I happen to have in the head, and now I know why it's back there because the bottle was compromised. It doesn't matter. We're going to roll this in and let it soak for a couple of seconds. Now I'm going to take all this stuff. Hang on a minute. I'm going to take these back to the deep sink where Thor is. I'm going to wash them out with water, and then we're going to come back and blow dry them. So just hold what you got. So leave it running, please, sir. So all I did was wash it down in the sink. And now I'm going to give it a quick blowout. We'll have to suppress this noise. The streaks you see here running in from just the dirt that was on the surface. We'll take care of that. See the shiny stuff up here? That's oil leaching out. There's all kinds of wonderful stuff that goes on in these things. If you stay on this long enough, it'll get wet. You see how it's getting wet? And when it gets wet, you shut that off and you just rub this back in, and all of a sudden those streaks aren't there anymore because you got enough stock finishing oil to take care of all those streaks. So even though you had this here, we just blend it all back through. Anyway, that's the hot work part of it. We're going to reset the camera and move on. So we're filming something out of order here because I want to show you something. This is what this looks like after we got done with it. And it's what it looked like before. And I polished that. And now we're going to go back in, get the steel wool figured out. And I'm going to go ahead and finish off this side and come on over to the other side, and you'll see all that. But I wanted to start here with you can see here where that actually cleaned up really nice. Let's get that streak of light running through there. All right, and I'm looking at my monitor off axis, so my color rendition really sucks. A little bit of just straight up 4/0 steel wool. Danish oil is a mixture of linseed and linseed oil and tung oil. And what that's going to do, we're not pushing really hard. We're not trying to make any streaks or anything. We're just taking anything on the surface and evening it out. And that's all the 4/0 does. This particular gun, we got lucky and the wood was in fabulous condition. And you see here, you can look and see, well, you can't see it. I don't know whether or not I'm on the monitor the right way or not. I can see tiger stripe all the way through here, but you can't. So let's do this. Let's wipe this off. Yeah, okay. There it is. There's the tiger stripe. You see that? So what the camera can see and what your eyes can render, it's all a matter of conjecture. So anyway, I'm just lightly wiping this down. Be careful of these edges. They're very sharp sometimes. And you don't want to blow a piece of this off that's been oil soaked, because then you're into a completely different area of the world. We'll get a little bit here on the end grain. And you leave this and you let this oil soak in. Now, if you did this 2 or 3 more times, it would start to look good, but it wouldn't look correct for the damage that's already existing in the stock. If you went after this and you sanded this stock all the way down to 0, you've added 2 weeks to the job and you really didn't need to do it. So if the wood is decent, and I mean the finish is basically flat, yeah, there's a couple of zings in it, but the gun's 80 years old. Just don't take a forend like this down. You don't have to. What the steel wool's going to do is rub some of the old finger oils out, and it's going to even everything up. Get a little bit of oil down inside the barrel channel here, just to let it be filled. Now, I said it was tung oil and it was linseed. It's also got a lot of what's called Stoddard solvent. You call that mineral oil. There's a lot of that in there. Be very careful you don't get it on your hands or your other eyebrow will turn white. Just don't do that. Anyway, we got that there, and we're going to let this sit for about 10 minutes. We're going to let it sit and just let the wood bring some of that into the game here. So we're just going to turn the camera off here, and then we'll turn it back on again in a minute. And then we'll show you what that looks like. So I'll back out now, and now we're in high speed time lapse, and you can see the oil soaking into the wood. It's just blasting all over the place, and we're there. And it's the bench is a magical place, isn't it? Now we'll just wipe it off. I'll show you what it does for a sheen. You keep coming back, you keep wiping this for a little bit. And now all of a sudden, even when this dries, this thing is going to look stunning. We have no mold, no mildew on the inside, and we've pretty much kept this gun from, it wasn't even close to going over the edge yet, but we did maintenance that needed doing. I'm guessing by the fact that none of the screws had boogered heads. I'm not entirely positive this gun's ever been taken apart. And based upon that bore, I'm not entirely positive this gun's ever been fired. All right. That'll sit there. So you do your woodwork while your metal's converting. You want to get your woodwork done because sometimes the woodwork just eats your lunch and it winds up taking you a long time. So I usually take the gun apart, get it converting, work the wood, and then the wood can just sit here for no matter what else we have to do. All right, I think we have a winner. I've carded half of this plate, and I have not carded the other half, and it really shows up when we flip it over. So there it is. This is what it looks like with all the converted gack on it and loose oxide on the surface that can just be wire wheeled off, boom. So if you're looking at, for instance, in a conservation, we look at this rear barrel band, which has been, scrubbed off. We see that there's still bluing down here inside that. And the polish is on this, but the finish is gone off of it, all right? So if we're gonna do a revival, we're gonna bring this gun back, we're gonna wind a bunch of years off of it. I wanna call those revivals. A straight up conservation is just getting to right here. And in Conservation 101, we took that Colt handgun to that point. The owner didn't want to push it. I want to push this gun. I want this gun to go back and be a little bit blued. So, here you can definitely see, I got to get the light on this right there, yeah. You can see here, see those pits? There's some pitting there. Are we going to be able to get rid of those? I don't know. But there's bluing missing, but the rest of the polish is here. We'll come up and we'll do this top half too. All right. Now, for comparison, this is the part under the finger lever, and look at that. That's its original glory. So we don't want to take the original finish off this gun. We just want to catch the pieces up. Now, guns that were originally rust blued, this is a lot easier on. Guns that were hot dipped in the 70s, you're gonna have to get out on a silver gun to start over again. Kind of cheesy. So, in comparison, this is the front barrel band as it was on the gun, and this is the rear barrel band as it's been converted out. So we want to go from here to something that looks kind of like this. Now, what everybody wants to do is put this thing on a buffer and take this garbage right here. Hang on a minute, let me get the bottom, let me get it in the light. They want to take this garbage right here and make it look like this, and you're not going to get there. And we're going to show you why here when we pull that Kennedy barrel out, and I'm going to show you what polishing actually does. Now, why did we come out here on the bench? I've been playing around with Charlestown Brown, right? We've been making it. Bob Easy's making this for me over at rustblue.com. Bob can turn the concrete I'm standing on blue and tell you where the electrons go. We're calling it Charlestown Brown because the chloride component of this is seawater from the Atlantic Ocean, because everybody knows that Charleston is where the Ashley Cooper and Wando rivers meet to form the Atlantic Ocean. So I have degreased my hands. I went to a fresh towel because you don't want to get the gun oils, you don't want to get the lubricants, you don't want to get anything near this. You just need to keep the oils apart. And ordinarily, I would never blue anything up here on this main bench. There's no way. I got a spot in the back. The spot in the back looks like a tornado went through it. It looks like it's been there since God took the sun critical. Anyway, we're going to take a little bit of this bluing solution. I'm going to dip it in a bottle right here, right? And I'm just going to swab some of this on. And the way we know we got it completely degreased is because it's just running out. It's going to be very, very hard to show you that it's staying where I'm putting it. It's not drawing back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut the blower off in the bluing room and don't go back in and cross-contaminate it. Use a different side of this. We're going to do this, but the relative humidity right now down here is about 10%. We just had a big ice storm go through here, and we're getting ready to get another storm. So there's not enough water in the air. Now, you can blue guns like crazy in Charleston during the summer, but it ain't the summer, is it? So what I'm going to do, we're going to go in the bluing room here. Hang on a minute. And I'm going to hang this in the bluing room. I'm going to shut the blowers off and let all those hot pots that were back there go ahead and see if we can get enough moisture in that room overnight to be able to frog this up, and we'll come back and talk about this in the morning. The next time you see all this thing should be orange. We'll see what it did. And then everything else, I'm going to finish carting this all off, and then we're going to get to those nasty chancres on that mag tube and talk about that. This is what it looked like after it sat there all night in the room with the rust on it. And you can see here where we now have this red oxide that is built up. So then what we do is we convert this in another boiling water evolution. Now it doesn't take 45 minutes to convert this out. This will convert out in about 10, and then we'll wind up with we're going to see what this looks like. I'm filming this on my cell phone because I'm trying to get it done while Bruno's not here. But anyway, there we go. That's what we're doing. We're going to go back to the tank, boil it, pick it up, wire wheel it, and I'll show it to you. Not wire wheel it. Every time I say that, I mean card. Okay, as you can see going around here, this is beautiful. This is the front barrel band. But this right here was where that big rust spot was. And it's three-dimensional, but not by much. Okay? So if we go in here, we can wipe this down. We can take this off. But this white spot right here is what the collectors have been grousing about for years. They're not wrong. The difference is once you do this, you better have known how to get out of it before you get into it. Like I said with the other part we did with the butt plate. Okay, there's three-dimensional buildup here. This wire wheel, you don't want to touch this wire wheel with your hands because it'll do damage. It'll tear stuff up. You get your hand in there, right? So you got to be careful what you're doing. The problem is that's a very small shanker, but if we wire wheel this and we get that layer down, there's a white spot here. And that white spot, you're going to get that white spot. I'm going to go all the way in. I'm going to go a lot more than I should, but you can see the color difference. You can also see the pits, which you cannot go back below. Everything's been converted down, but we've now ground the finish off of this, and we are now committed to re-bluing this plate. Again, it's a rust blued gun originally, so we have a lot of options. But remember, we had all that pitting around the edges there. There's nothing we can do about this pitting. Okay, but you see we've turned the plate white there. So the best thing you can do is feather that whiteness and make it soft. You see what I mean? You don't want to have an edge there. So we feathered that. All right, so if you took a shanker off with the hard part of a wheel, you have to be able to rust blue before you pull this stun. Well, we can see the basic blue hue. This towel is more gray than blue, but we can see there's bluing in here. we've converted this pipe out. And I'm going to tell you, I went ahead and wire wheeled it back here just because I wanted you guys to see how absolutely gorgeous this thing turned out. This is the guy that used to own it. I don't know why people put driver's license numbers. This is the stuff up underneath that's under the fore end. You never see this. We are going to blue that though, because we've made the decision to take this gun into a revival format out of a pure conservation format. But this is what the tube looked like. And remember at the beginning, this tube had a lot of rust on it. All right. There is another way to get this thick material off of this right there. Is you guys have heard about people saying use a brass or copper washer. You can take a, just a regular piece of cartridge brass and crunch it down on a vise and crunch it around something. Mine happens to be made out of a 50 BMG case because, well, it's significantly cooler. Anyway, you can take the brass and get into this rust. All right. You can get into that and you can knock that down. And that's actually doing, I'm trying to not touch it with my fingers too much. But that actually is not a bad way to go. There's another way to do this. If the chancres are particularly thick, you can take a polished hammer and you can, so we didn't get on it up here. Now you can't do this too hard, but on solid or metal, or if the chancres are particularly thick, you can just pound on this. Now you don't want to hit it too hard. I don't want to out around this magazine tube. You see how it's getting shiny right there? It's because we're actually mechanically crushing the above grade chancres. I don't want to hit this thing too hard because as we've seen before, you can screw up a lot of crap with a 2-ounce ball peen. But if you're going to hit an actual exposed gun part, you had better have polished your hammer faces first. See, now that we've done this, and the brass is softer than the underlying steel, but harder than the oxide layer. This actually works. Now, stay away from edges, because you can round edges over with this, and we don't want to do that. All right, so we've seen that hardwire whaling will remove bluing, and yet this does not. So what we'll do here, yeah, it's pretty damn deep up here. I am removing bluing. There's no way you're not going to remove it, but I'm only removing it right where it's shining at you, right there. See? So then what does this actually look like? We've done an okay job now of removing, right, a lot of the three-dimensionality of that. That does work. You can, and I probably will, kiss this on the hard wheel because I'm going to blue it anyway. But if you get to a point here where you're removing rust chancres with a brass, spade bit, not a spade bit, a brass scraper, you're going to be doing a little bit of bluing. So the thing is, I'd go back, watch the video Bob and I did on how to blue stuff, and get it to frog up and do whatever we did, and know either that you're going to do it or know that you can't do it, and therefore you can't go here, and we'll go from there, even if my scraper is cooler than yours. We're going to get asked. This is a Grobay 4-row 16.463. And if you're really lucky and the moon, the Van Allen belts and Mars all line up, 360-164-631 is the Brownells part number for this bad boy. Do you need this? No. Was I given this $900 buffer by an outgoing gunsmith 10 years ago? Yes. What you do need though is a fan. It could just be a cheap $20 box fan from wherever. You do need this filter because everything in this filter, this is about 4 guns in this filter. All of this garbage, you see it laying down there on the bottom of the bench, will be all over everything in your shop, and don't do that. This is the piece that we showed you that had been rusted, and I'm going to just start by carting this off. This is all we're doing. We're not grinding on it. We're not doing anything. This is the piece that we had left in the rusting vat overnight. And you can see now it doesn't have that silver stripe down the center of it. Okay, so that's cool. So that's what I mean by we went from conservation, which is stopping it, into a revival mode where we're bringing the gun back from the dead. So this is what this looks like when you're taking this off. A little bit. Don't nail this buffer down. Let it move, or you'll pay. Because now the buffer moved a little bit instead of throwing a part into the fan. This wire wheel is great if you're doing 5, 6, 7 of these things a week like I do. But if you're only doing one gun a year, you don't need all of this kit. This is just a rotary piece of steel wool, is all it is. Let's get up in here. I don't think the rust was that thick. I think this converted off. And see, that came off. It's leaving a little bit of white behind, but we would be all right up there if that's all we had to do. By the way, how do I get up inside here? A toothbrush? Brass brush? Well, how do I do the bore? Brass cleaning brush works awfully awesome. Don't overthink this. And the only reason why I brought that up is because I've got pages of comments going back years, people asking the same question over again. No, you do not draw the temper on springs just because the water was at 212 degrees. You don't do that. Okay, we're done here. We did that work up here, and now we're going to go ahead and hit it with the wheel. That's now down flat. That's down flat. You can see the marks on it. It got pitted. I am going to put this on the hard wheel and just touch it a little bit, and then we're going to stick it back down in the tank, and we're going to push the finish one more step. We're going to put the rusting chemicals on just like we did here, and we're going to take it back down to a point where it looks less molested. But you look at this, you really can't tell that we punched the finish up. We never removed the original finish, so you can actually say that the OG finish is there. All right, now, this is the Kennedy barrel. This is the barrel. I'm going to show you why we don't buff stuff with a buffing wheel. So I'm just going to start by, this had been in the tank, and I'm going to take that nasty rust off the top. As you can see, this 160-year-old gun barrel, if it wasn't too short, this is NFA short. So why ask the question? We just pulled it off. Plus the inside of it looks like a sewer pipe. So it's not useful as a gun barrel. Let me just buff this whole thing down. Wire wheel it down. And then we're going to take it over and we're going to put it on a buffer. And I'm going to polish this thing. And I'm going to make it nice and shiny. And then we're going to blue it. And I'm going to show you why we don't do that. This barrel has pits on it. Wow, it's 106 years old and it's made out of iron. Who knew? When we get back to some better lighting, I'm going to show you where the pits are on this gun and which ones we're going to attempt to remove. They'll be right in this area in here. You can see them go by. All right, that's what we got to do. So we're going to go up right now. We're going to go up to the bench here, and I'm going to put this thing on a hard, basically a Scotch-Brite wheel, but it'll buff because a sisal wheel with 200 grit buffing compound on it's the same thing. I've stamped this number 3 in the bottom of this piece of pipe. It doesn't freaking matter. The thing I want you to see is, see, that has depth. So I shot this from a different camera, and you can see here as I'm rolling this underneath under high magnification that there are definite edges to this thing, and this looks pretty nice. So this was what happened. The gun had been polished, then it was stamped. Okay, so there's not blue down in here, but ordinarily you polish, then you roll mark, then you blue. So I'm going to show you what happens is if you get out of order here. So now the order we're going to do it is we're going to do it in polish, blue, roll mark, blue. And we're going to see why you cannot do it in that order. And I have been eviscerated for even mentioning this, but I'm going to show this to you. And I've got a couple other spots on here where we're going to go. So we're going to change angles. This isn't a buffing wheel. This is a Scotch-Brite wheel. Yeah, all a buffing wheel is made out of cloth and loaded with an abrasive. And what I want to do here is I'm going to come across this number down the long axis. I'm not grinding on it particularly hard. All right, and now I'm going to come up and down beside it so we can do a pass down this barrel. I'm going to show you what happens when we do this. All right, there's our number 3, but I want to show you what happened to it under high magnification where it has drugged the edges off, drug off the raised corners, and why it's obvious that that's been done. And then the other one is, let me find them in here. Hang on a minute. There they are. That set of punch marks that I put in there, let's make that set of punch marks go away, all right? And if you think you don't throw sparks with a polishing wheel, you will. But those marks are our pits, see? And we're going to make those pits go away. This is your pit. This is your base metal. To get rid of that pit, you got to remove all of this metal and you get this wave. As I'm rolling back and forth here, you can see all the ripples that are in this. Now you can't see it when you're looking at it dead on too much, but you see how that almost looks like a meteor shower falling up? And those streaks that are sticking out the back ends of those pits, that's all got to be gotten rid of. But if you're looking at it, let me get it up the long axis. Look at that. Okay, that's what the entire gun's going to look like, because you can't get it flat because you got lettering. So, you know, there's some actual important, let's say, how deep do you think that Whitneyville Kennedy lettering is? Right there, right? It's pretty, hang on, flipping over. Right there. You think that'll put up with that punishment? It won't. But just to get the gun smooth, and you weren't the one that made the decision to screw it up in the first place, you ought to think about that. So I do not even have a buffer. Now I'm going to take, we just kissed that 3, and I'm going to take a photograph of it at the same magnification I was at before, and I'm going to show you that just a quick application of other damaged that number. And this is why on an old gun, especially on a milsurp, you can't buff these things. They just look like crap when you do. In the past, I have been talking about using kerosene to drive the water out of freshly set bluing. Kerosene's getting real hard to come by. even the off-road stuff, even the dyed stuff, is getting kind of hard to come by. So we went about setting for other things that can drive the water out of a blued finish. Diesel works, it's a mess. Obviously kerosene works, but we have been playing with about a 50-50 mix of AT, automatic transmission fluid, and oil, used, and I mean used, 5,000 mile motor oil. You don't want new motor oil. Lawnmower oil works. Briggs & Stratton sells a 4-stroke because lawnmower oil does not have detergents in it. The detergents attempt to remove the rust layer that we have just spent a lot of time getting right. So I found, and only pour, you know, I've got this tray here, only pour a little bit in here because one, that's enough for an entire gun, and two, when you dump this tray on the floor, you're going to be glad you only put a little bit of oil in it. All right, anyway, that comes out here. Just get a chip brush real quick, and what I want to show you guys is when we walk this thing down, and we've done this before, get up on the inside, you do this and you let this oil stand on this receiver for about 10 minutes, and that thing is going to look killer. Now, yeah, we put some finish on it. Is it historically correct? I don't know, but they're not making any Model 94s anymore. So let's wind back and look at the difference between something that we want to have, something that was not particularly rare in the first place. This isn't a particularly rare gun, but you don't encounter them much anymore. And then something that's just so rare that it's an artifact unto itself, and then you have the stuff that is so rare and so pristine that you don't dare touch it. You got to think a little bit about doing this. At the end of the day, this is just a 94. It was built in 1939. Our initial lookup said 42. Several other lookups said 39, and that jives with the 1940 thing carved in a butt plate, which is what sent us out looking for 1940, but it was made in 42s. You know, that doesn't line up. So you got to think before you get into one of these. You know, that K98 that you're working on, yeah, it's now becoming uncommon, but they're not particularly rare. What's rare is an unduffel cut, rust, not hot dipped, K98K with the correct Waffenamps on it, all that haven't been dotted out because the French captured them. The lock and screws on the two action bolts have got Waffenamps on them. That is getting pretty hard to come by. So why would you let that rust out? I don't get it. When is it lack of patina? When does lack of maintenance become patina? When? That's what I want to know. I am not advocating for scrubbing down uncommon, rare, pristine pieces of equipment. But there comes a time when you just got to hit it a little bit harder than you thought you were going to have to hit it. You got to admit, here, let's just get that oil on there. You got to admit that mag tube come out pretty nice compared to what it looked like in the beginning, and we did not really molest it. Now, in all of this work we did, in all of this push, there is one piece on this entire gun that I didn't push. I didn't put that second layer of rust on it. I just carted it out the way it was. And when the gun's all done and we get it outside in a broad daylight, we're going to see if you can figure out what piece that was. All right, I'm going to throw this thing back together again. We're going to get outside and shoot it on the backside. 1894 Winchester. We didn't have to molest the wood. A lot of conservation / revival videos are about the metal because the metal decays and it gets attacked by the environment, and the wood typically doesn't. In this particular case, we were able to take this apart, conserve it, and produce the results we wanted to produce. Operational gun, ready to go back in a scabbard. I think this thing was damaged in a scabbard, but we're at this point right here where you look at that thing and boy, was that not worth it or what? Yeah, buddy. Anyway, get a good look at this. You can do this, and the question becomes, when does a conservation, which is stopping the decay, turn into a revival, which is bring it back and wind the life off of it for a little bit. You can never truly, totally overhaul one of these things because they were only new once. You cannot buff off pits because it just destroys the gun. But you got to go from here. And I would ask yourself the question, look at the muzzle and see if you can see it. There's 1 or 2 pits available, but other than that, you can't see it. And as always, it has been a pleasure.